So I'm going to share this with you now. And this is something that I've got quite a big passion for. This is what I've developed over the years. And if I say developed over the years, as soon as you start moving into project management methodology, project management process, then you start losing yourself, number one, in the lingo and the functions and the life cycle and the processes and the process groups and the knowledge areas. And if you ever did anything in the PMI or the PMBOK, then you would know what I'm saying. It's just this maze of confusion that you go into. And what I've said is you can actually make things very simple. So I want to show you this for two reasons. Number one, to tell you how we get to the projects at the beginning of the day, not at the end of the day, and how that is actually led out from strategy. And then also just a quick touch in terms of the project plan and then what happens after the project plan and after the project as well. Okay, so when we talk about, and I just need to make sure that you can see. Can you see my pointer, Dion? If I just move around on the slide.
Yes, I can.
You can. Okay, so I can use this as a pointer. Okay, so when we look at this, I want you to forget about all the detail that we see over there. So don't worry about any detail. Just look at the bigger blocks. You're going to see four big blocks. One big block, a two big block, three big blocks, and four big blocks. The first block, and that is the important block for me for today, is because we want to take a, let's call it a strategic approach to what we're going to talk about today. So this is why this is important to me. Now, normally, most projects, or most of the time, when the project comes to you or in your path, it is even after the project brief. And the project brief is what we say in project is the formal trigger. That is now saying someone say to someone else, listen, there's a project manager, and it's an instruction for someone to go and do the work. But I want to take this back further I want to say, go stream up in the process. And I want to say, look at where everything comes from. We're talking about initiation comes from strategy, and I know you guys are going to learn about this. Strategy comes from, or in line with strategy, you've got something which we call the business case in projects. Business case in projects is the strategic reason for a project. And if I'm from academics, I would say the best way to really talk about that, the business case, it is the problem statement. So when we talk about projects and where does projects come from, we say there's a problem statement, or what I would say, a pain point. Something happened in the business or in the organization, or something that sort of said to us, listen, we need change. If you go to the definition of a project is when there were change. If you applied the project successfully, then were change. So you need the change, and it's something that sort of you need to improve, or you need to make something better, or something is bothering you, and as a result of that comes out the project at the end of the day. So what we are saying is you identify in your organization pain points, problem statements, which are in line with what you want to achieve, the bigger part of your project. We're going to talk about strategy in a moment when we get to the second slide. So what we say at this stage, we say that as a result of, did someone ask something or no?
Yes, Coenie, Dion, there was just a request. Would it be possible to put your slide in presentation mode?
Okay, we'll try that. Yes. Let's see. How's that?
Perfect. Thank you.
Better. Okay, cool. Awesome. Thanks. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's say. Okay. So you've got a problem in your organization you want to solve, and you solve that problem by having some options in place, doing decision-making processes, and this is almost like a visual way of saying, no, there's 3 projects that can satisfy this problem, and you go through a process that you can say, no, that one's not going to work, no, that one's not going to work, there's a project that will work, and then we go from planning to execution. Now, and if I say execution, we are not planning, sorry, pre-planning to actually start planning. So and I want to say pre-plan, there's no better way of saying this. I call it pre-project. Because there's 2 very, very important moments in time when we talk about projects. One is when the idea of the project comes alive, And the second one is when the project actually comes alive. So the analogy, and excuse me for being a bit more maybe out of the norm with my analogies, but you know when you get a baby, when a baby is born. Now that moment when the baby is born in project management, we call about that birthing process is when the project brief is being sent out, or the charter. We know the charter, no? So at that moment, we've got a project and we've got a project manager. But like babies, and I'm not going to fill in the detail too much, but like babies, if you go back in time, something happened in the past. And that's something that happened in the past was the strategy and the business case idea over there. Now, so you can see that is when the project started to form within, well, let's take it from the womb of the company. Okay, so that is where things start happening. And if you don't do all of this correct, guys, if it's not linked to your strategy correctly, if it's not thought out through the process of getting from the business plan to the project brief, then you can be so successful in all of the stuff that we talk about. Wait, I think I can actually do a little bit of a better pointer there. You can be so successful in all of this stuff over here. This is planning, even execution, even delivering the project successful. But the long term is not going to be successful. So that's when we talk about the difference between the product and the process. The process is successful, but the product is not successful. Now, so if we talk about good examples in the past, as we can say, where we've got in South Africa all the great stadiums that we built for the World Cup. It's 11 years ago. And a lot of that infrastructure sits there and stand there. We don't use it. It's not a return on our investment, but it was a great project. The project was delivered successful. And now we sit with a problem. And this is something that I try to get awareness in my client organizations where I work, is to say, but yes, we need to sort out all of this if there's problems, but this is worth nothing if we don't do the right projects. Now it's like doing the wrong thing right or the right thing wrong. Eh? The right thing needs to start over here with strategy and your business case and what you want to achieve through that. Okay, so I don't want to stand still on it, but I just briefly, just briefly want to quickly go over this, sort of saying, what is the value that we bring in a project plan then? If I were to ask you, and I actually want to ask the crowd, if you can actually answer. If I were to ask you randomly, I walk past you and I say, listen, just in one sentence, can you tell me what is a project plan? What would you say is a project plan? Anyone? Let's just take one brave soldier in this answer. Hello? Are there anybody there?
It seems like I'll have to. Oh, okay. So Martin says it's a roadmap.
A roadmap. Okay, I like that. Thank you, Martin. Yeah, nice. That's that. See, that's the thing about the text answers. It's too short for that. Anybody else? Anybody want to verbally say what is it?
All right. The other one I'd like to put in over there is if you don't plan to do anything over here or put timelines to it, nothing ever happens. It's just going to stay an idea.
Okay, so in that answer that was just said now, there was one component of what I think is the core of any project plan. And what was that? Who can tell me what word did he say, which was very important over there?
Breaking down steps.
Yeah, okay, I want to just go back to the previous answer. What did he say? What was one of the core thing?
Timelines.
Timeline. So what is a timeline? Timeline is a schedule. So if you ask me what is the core, what is the lowest level of definition that I can give you for a project plan? I would say it is a what. What is the what? A what I need to do. It is a when I need to do that, and is a how much is going to cost me. And that, guys, is the core of not just the project plan, but project management as a whole. I jokingly always say in my classes that I'm dealing with in Stellenbosch, a class of, well, it used to be 600, 300, there's two sessions, 300 in a class. Now these days, that's also virtual now. But I used to say, if in the beginning of the year, when I come into the class, I say to them, listen, guys, I know everybody's not always listening to what I say. But if you, for some reason, fell asleep and you woke up and you see that I asked you a question and and you randomly just say time, cost, and quality, or scope, time, and cost, then you would probably be right, because half of the answers in project management is about the what, the scope or the quality, the what I need to do, the when I need to do that, and the how much is that going to cost us. Okay, and then obviously in the process to get there, you're going to fill in some details. You're going to look at the stakeholders. You're going to plan for communication. You're going to deal with risk. You're going to have a nice idea or nice process to develop the scope from your goals right through to a work breakdown structure, scope of works, and then right at the end, you're going to sit with activities. Okay, but we're not going to go too deep into that. Then we say you go over from the plan to execution, and in the execution you need to do two things. You need to monitor and you need to control. Monitor means look back, control means look forward. Saying back in terms of what did I do, in terms of what I plan to do, and where am I going with this in terms of what I want to do. Né? So it's that sort of a toolkit that we use in project management is to get to where we need to be. Now, so we're talking about change management, reporting, earned value management, and these are tools and these are stuff that we use to help us to successfully deliver a project. And then lastly, we say once we are starting to get to the end of a project, we number one needs to understand or to know that we've done what we said we were going to do. And we need to look at ourselves. We need to make sure everything's finished up, because we say a project is finite. It's at some stage it's finished and it's gone. So if you were to ask me, do a quick 5-minute, or what was that? It's a more of 15 to 20-minute discussion around what a project is and project management is, that would have been that. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to take this top part a bit further. And I want us to look at the relationship between business operations and strategy. So before we go off from this slide, anybody wants to maybe add to something or ask or ask something about it, just in terms of what we just said now?
Coenie, if I could maybe kickstart the conversation, in your experience and with the clients that you work with, we know in organizations there's a disconnect between the strategic planning processes and the project management processes. Where in your experience are making or are companies making the mistake of creating that disconnect? Is it like from a top-down error, or where does that exact disconnect in your experience take place?
Guys, it's a very, very good question, and I know in the organizations that you work, you're going to feel the same. And coming out of a project management environment like you have now with all these courses and all the stuff that you guys are going to do, you're going to feel that. And I call it the disconnect between projects and not projects. People who know about projects and people who does not know about projects. And the thing about, if you take a typical, and this is no disregard or disrespect to business managers or top managers or CEOs, if you want to call it that, is that if you're a good business manager, a good CEO, a top manager in a company, your focus is mostly operational, and a lot of those kind of roles don't see the value in projects. And that is why I like to talk about strategy and strategic link between projects and operations, because it is something that could add so much value to the success of the business, but does not get enough attention at the end of the day. So to answer your question, what I see a lot is, let's pretend one of you guys come out of a course like this, go back into an organization, maybe you even have a project-based organization, or maybe not, but there are some high-profile projects that add to the success of the business. And now you see this shortage in the organization. And what are you going to do when you're looking for a shortage in organization? You're going for resources upwards, and you say, can we get some systems and processes in place, or maybe train our people, or maybe set up a PMO or something? And they don't see the value of projects at that level. So from a top-down approach, there's no awareness of the value. I've got a very, very good friend who became a good friend of mine, who did the PGD, the postgrad diploma in project management at the let's call it a sister or a brother institute of yours, and very, very nice person. And this postgrad really changed his whole life. If I say his whole career, he went into another career path of project management, and he went into this role of setting up processes and systems within the organization, and I want to say setting up a PMO, project management office. That was sort of the bigger reason for him going there. And he was so excited. And every few months I have lunch with the person, and I chat with him, and we talk about them. And it is so frustrated for him. Well, it's frustrated for me also to see this, that that is why it's probably good not to name any companies, but where in the organization they saw the PMO as another function that needs to be set up, but they don't see the importance of that function. And it is so frustrating, because he says he and his office can save millions of rands in the projects that they take on and the success of the projects. And where they go, and there are a lot of the sort of the projects that they deal with is like, let's call it new product development projects. So if you think about how much that can unlock in the organization, it is huge. But it's just like, okay, there's no resources. You've done what we said you would do. We've got a PMO, and we've got a few processes and systems. So if you want to set up a new project, you know what is the route to go through, and that is very frustrating. Maybe that's then now also good to now take that from that slide to this one. And
Coenie, if I could just pause you, I saw a couple of hands, and
okay, that's good.
Yeah, it's good. And now I lost. Okay, the one I found again. Christian Cardoso has a question for you.
Christian.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hello, Christian.
Hi there. Yeah, listen, I second that. I think in context of my history with project management, it's always been a lot smaller projects, but I've always insisted that the organizations that I've worked with implemented a lot more often. I think if you're stuck in a general management role, you really looking at the long term and not entirely planning for what happens at short term. And I think project management really gives you that tools to, when the strategy really changes very rapidly, to be able to do that change. Yeah. Unlike general management, it's really about what you said, it's just managing the operations and the processes, but not being always prepared for that moment of change. And I think COVID has really brought it into place where business is really needed. So when I actually motivated this course, which I was more than happy to pay myself, I think it also created quite a awareness within the organization where this need is, because we don't realize, it's obviously too cliche to say that you manage projects every day in some sort of smaller fashion, but to really look at our strategy that's constantly changing. And if you look at our organization, from working externally to internally, it's becoming a project by itself. To plan that, it's not temporary, it's becoming a permanent thing. And the market is now changing, how our strategy now changes, what do we do with staff. So it's quite I have to say, I'm passionate about project management, not in the level that you are, Coenie, but I am, and I believe in it, that the more people are aware of the skills and the techniques, business will benefit at a level they cannot conceive at the moment, that's for sure.
And it goes, Christian, thanks. It goes further than that. It goes further in the sense that and that is sort of what I want to bring over in the stuff that I do, is that a project manager thinks differently than an operational manager. And just one example is that the definition of the core thing that we deal with projects is that there's an end date. And operations is just an ongoing process. Now, I mean, these are now definitions. But if you just think about the impact of those definitions, if you go back and say, listen, I've got someone who sits there at a higher level than me, maybe, or whatever, sits there, and they think if we're not going to finish it today, it will be done tomorrow. Now, if you think about just that in an operational environment, that's fine. But in a project, we don't think like, we say we've got a deadline, we need to make, even if we work through the night, and that's just one example of how something as simple as a definition can change the whole way you think about certain things and take on things. Obviously, you need the let's call it the operations mind and the high-level strategic mind in terms of other stuff as well. But that's just one thing that I sort of got also out of what you said about the link between the company and the organization. Yeah. Another.
And I think a good question from Anna Johannes all the way from Namibia, I believe.
Wow, awesome.
Yeah. So she says most organizations don't have PMOs. And you also made the comment now that even when there are a PMO there, they're considered to be almost a compliance tool or something that every big organization has. But then there's also, all of a sudden, they also find themselves that they're not the silver bullet. They just become part of the disconnect.
Yeah, see, so that is why when I talk about project management, I say that whether it is a formal structure or whether it is just I want to say a role. So if you think about PMO, now PMO is just a fancy word for let's call it a project department. Actually, now that's what it is. But even if you don't have a project department, the function of project management should be somewhere in the organization. And that should be looked after, and that should be there should be training, there should be development, there should be specific roles within that, and because that is all adding value at the end of the day to the bigger part of what we want to achieve in the company. Okay, if there's no other questions, then I'm going to continue with the next, because that's actually the more exciting part for me than what we just spoke about, and that is the sort of the interaction between. Let me just get this in presentation mode again. And I know, by just chatting with you already, I know you're going to enjoy this a lot. This is a great slide that I like to talk about, or to show, or to use to discuss the link between strategy, projects, and operations. Okay, so let's start at strategy. Let's start at the top. Everybody agrees and can see that this is not a block that says organizational strategy. It is an arrow. And it sounds very simple, but it's very important, because an arrow say something else than a block. An arrow gives me indication of movement, of direction, of constant development. And guys, and we can't emphasize more enough how important it is that your strategy must be an active part, an active function in the organization. Where there's lots and lots of these definitions or case studies, and I think the one that I've used in the past is the difference between the BlackBerry company and the Garmin company. Now, if you take the BlackBerry and I've been doing training or facilitating courses for a good part of 12 years, and I always said that if I were to do this course, I'm saying this to you guys now, I'm doing this course 12 years ago. On your tables at your home, 8 or 9 out of 10 people of you will have a BlackBerry on the table with you, and the other guy will probably have a Nokia, and there might be a Samsung in there somewhere. Yeah? And they literally thought they had it, they've made it, they've done it. And I mean, this is not a formal case study, so I haven't read up about this too much. But in my mind, what happened is they thought, you see, we've got it. Everybody's buying it. The U.S. government is buying BlackBerries, and they thought what they thought at that stage, and that probably was their strong point. Is maybe some, I don't know what, the BBMs and the keypads or whatever. They thought that is what the people want, and that's what technology. We're going to give them that, and we decided we're not going to make this an arrow like it is there. We're going to make it a block. And the moment in which you make that a block, it means we are happy with what we have. And the moment in which you don't move and develop and look after your strategy, what's going to happen with you? And it's becoming, let's call it a verb. Nah? You're going to be blackberried. No, because if you don't develop, then nothing. There's nothing gonna, and that's what's happening. I mean, we can see that now. Today, no one is buying BlackBerry. The BlackBerry company was probably bought over for R1 or R2 by a lot of different companies in the past. Now let's take that bad example and put a good spin to that, or a good example in contrast to that. If you take now the Garmin company, now I'm a Garmin fan. Now, if you think about Garmin and you think about what is it that Garmin make, or what are their strong points? Again, let's go back 10 years and you ask yourself, what would the company Garmin be? It would probably be some GPS transportation device, device that can tell you where to drive with your car. And I mean, they probably made lots of their money. A lot of their money they made out of that industry. They bought they sell the devices, and they sold maybe some of the software and the rights to be able to do this. I'm just struggling a bit with my. Sorry guys, I just want to fix my. You guys, the view on your side is fine. Everything's still 100%. There we go.
Yes,
Everything's
yes.
good. Yeah. Okay. And that was the business model. Now, if you are not tuned into what is going on in the industry out there, and you were Garmin, you would have woke up one day and you would have seen, oh my word, there's a small little company in America. They call themselves Google, the biggest broadly based company in the world, is giving away free what you are making your money off. And that is GPS devices or what do you call it? Navigation devices, because everybody's got a phone and you can just pop in where you want to go, and they give that away free. I mean, there's no cost associated to that. Now, if you were to ask me which one of the two companies 10 years ago will not make it, knowing what we know or knew, then I would have said it is the Garmin company, because they are solely seated in the product and the service that they are selling. But I don't know who of you are runners. I don't know who of you are bicycle, people riding bicycles. But they've changed their strategy. They changed their focus point from vehicle devices to personal fitness. So they probably did a bit of a SWOT analysis, and through that process they see, well, what is our strong point? We've got this good technology. Where is the industry going? What is going to be the buzzwords in the next 5 or 10 years? Personal, let's call it personal health devices or whatever. And out of that came this wearables, personal stuff that we use now, and that they are making probably more money. I'm actually on my wrist now. I'm sitting with a Garmin device that cost 5 times more expensive than the original Garmin, let's call it GPS devices that you have in your car. Now, that's a great example for me for how you can apply strategy and know what's going on in strategy and say, but I'm going to stay fit. I'm going to stay with what's going on in the world and what's going on in the industry, and I'm still going to be successful. Okay, so that's now on a business strategy high level. Now it's an organizational strategy part. Out of that, we already spoke about the business case, and we said the business case is the pain point. And the pain point is the stuff that you want to solve, and normally that stuff that you want to solve is linked to a strategic strategy, a strategic drive or policy or something that you want to improve in your organization to what? To get closer to your strategy. So if you think about what could have been a nice project back in what was it, 2010 or 2009 or 2011 from BlackBerry maybe, is to say, but where is industry going? Where's technology going? Technology is going away from hard buttons, which we think is our strong points, to touch screens, which everything's going to move into. So what is the project? Yes, let's get a project in place that can develop that industry or develop that technology so we can take it further and become or stay successful or whatever. Okay, so this is the drive force, and there's a very, very important reason why that's linked to strategy. Okay, now what happens in the organization is out of strategy or out of business case, we go to, and I want you to see these two triangles over here. The first triangle is the project triangle. That's in my side, it's a purplish, bluish color. And on the other side, we've got the green color. The green is operations, and the purple or the blue is the project world. So again, you might not have a PMO, but this is the function of project in your organization. So what happens is the project guys, let's call it the guys, the ladies and the gentlemen, the people, the project management people, they take that from the business case and they deliver. What do they deliver? The service, product, and capability. This is solving the pain point. Remember, we spoke about a pain point, and they hand that over to the operations side. And guys, I said that, hand that over, such a prominent way. Because that is the most understated line that you guys see over there. that line is very, very deliberate over there. If I say deliberate, in projects, we say a project finish, and at the moment in which the project is finished and completed, you hand it over to the other side, you hand it over to operations, and what does operations do with it? They drive it, they get the benefit out of that. But the problem is, and Dion, I know Dion like to ask me, yes, but how does that work in real life, and how do my clients see this? Now, this line over there is the biggest problem that I see in industry, why projects fail. Because you are going from, I'm working on a project, I'm planning, I'm executing, I'm doing a lot of stuff over here, to using the product without really handing it over, without really finishing the project. Now, so you are putting a new system in place. They started developing, and remember, that's the previous discussion. I think it was Christian. It's actually nice, because the problem that I have with that sort of fuzzy environment of everybody's project managers, everybody's in the project team, let's work on the project, is that we don't understand our roles, and that you start using the thing which you just started developed, and that you don't even realize that you are not busy, that you are actually finished with the project already, or not finished with the project. Now, because there's a difference between scope creep. What is it? Scope creep. Well, let's start at the beginning. There's a difference between scoping, scope creep, and then never finishing a project, and as a result of continuous changes, not having a successful project. Now, and that is sort of the value that I want to bring, is that even when you don't have a PMO, a hard office which deal with projects, you still need to realize, listen, it's two hats that I'm putting on myself. The one is the projects hat, the other one is the operations hat. I need to hand it over to myself now, and I need to drive that project. And to drive that project, we say we're getting the benefits. And what is the benefits? The benefits is what I spoke about, the pain point, is solving the pain point. Now, it's the problem statement, solving the problem. Okay, and then they drive it, they use it, they get out of it what they need to, and then from time to time you need to say, well, that new product, that new process, that new thing that I brought into the business through projects, which is in line with strategy, that new thing needs to be either updated or revamped or re-looked at, and then we call those operational projects. It's still a project, but it's to update or upgrade or make the operational world better on this side. And then getting the benefits again out of that. Okay, so can you guys see how important the link is between, and it's like a crown. Now, can you see the strategy is a crown? The crown sits on top of the company, which has got two parts to that, the projects part or the project side, as well as operations side. And they all need to work together to have a successful delivery at the end of the day. And that is where I want to go with this, and I want to think of, well, the awareness that I want you guys to see. Any questions around this or anything you want to add?
Yeah. Mafuka Mofili, I hope I pronounced that right. She made a statement about when you spoke about the BlackBerry and Garmin example. How do you as a project manager then sort of position yourself so that you don't become just stuck in the short term and just in the project, but that you also have a long-term view and make sure that you are on top of strategic trends out there, and that you strategically align as well, but not get swept away by the hype and losing sight of the basics that still needs to be performed.
Yeah. So the sad thing of all of this, and the classes and the stuff that I facilitate is always very, very strongly linked to the business and very, very strongly linked to the strategy of the organization. But the sad thing about it is, in theory, or if you want to be theoretically correct, the project manager has got nothing to do with that over there or that over there. Really, it sounds bad. Now, it's actually only over here where he operates. So in theory, and that is the sad part of this. I've got a sad part, but I've got a good part coming. So we deal with the sad stuff first. The sad thing is that that you as a, and I always use this, I love to use the example of the Moses Mabhida Stadium. That was by far the most successful project that we had from all the stadiums new stadiums that we built in South Africa. And the sad thing about that thing, and I'm not saying it's not successful or not, I'm just saying it's probably not long-term successful as it should be. But the sad thing about that is the project manager did a great job there. But it's not his fault or her fault that the wrong decisions was made upstream. So the sad thing or the reality is that we as project managers, as functional project managers, don't really, and I actually want to go back here, don't really operate here too much, really at all. We don't really even have a role to play even there. So what I want to do is I want to have an awareness with the people that I talk to that you are not, hopefully not going to be a functional project manager forever. You're going to move out of this world into this world, or then out of maybe this world into this world. And then I want you to be aware of saying, but listen, are the right projects being rolled out? Have you ever heard this happening? There's a company, there's a new CEO, and all the projects are being put on hold. And I wish I could see you guys now, because I know everybody's saying yes, yes, yes. We remember, we know that, we've seen it a lot. And my question is, why? Why would we do that? Dion, I see you want to say something.
No, I mean, you used the word earlier, and you referred to change, and we're in a COVID time now,
Yeah.
and if someone didn't understand the concept of change and the impact of change on business and business decision making, a continuous reprioritization, which is what you're now referring to.
Yeah.
It's would you mind just speaking a little bit to managing projects in something like the equivalent of a COVID era, where the organizational learning is sort of on a continuous basis, and the time periods of learning are just shortened and shortened and shortened, but still we have this potentially rigid scope that a project manager was assigned with. And how do you create that mindset to say, okay, but I'm not just the project manager, I'm in the business firstly and foremostly, and I need to continually realign with business requirements.
Yeah, yes, Dion, that is so as a project manager, there's a few things that you need to be, let's call it that. You need to be a good leader, you need to be a good communication manager, you need to be a communicator, you need to be good with risk, you've got these roles to play. Something that I want to say pre-COVID almost, that we didn't put into that list, and I want to call it, what do they call it? There is an actual word for that. It's entrepreneurial. Entrepreneurial means you are an entrepreneur, but in your own company. And I think in the past it was like it's very reactive. Although project manager is a proactive person in the way you manage your project, but your problem that you solve were reactive. And what I mean by that is you get a project, you deliver it successful, and you go on. And I wish there was some data on COVID on how many projects were just obviously canned. Now, if I say canned, just stopped with COVID. And the example, so when we talk about business cases in a larger course, let's call it, we say that your business case needs to be valid, and that's the first reason. I know Prof. Piet will also say the same thing. Is as soon as your business case is not valid anymore, no matter where you are, you must can the project, because that's the reason for being in a project. And then I go very extreme and I say, again, let's take something like a stadium. You've built a $4 billion or billion rand stadium. You've spent 3 billion rand on a 4 billion rand stadium, and now the World Cup is not coming anymore. Now you need to can that. Obviously, you're not. Now this is on a very extreme, let's call it the infrastructure level. But I think as project managers in this weird time, is you must almost think like, oh my word, I'm halfway through this project. I've added a lot of value. The business case is not valid, in our case, as a result of, let's call it COVID. what can I do now? How can I change this so that we can still do something? And it's almost like you want to be agile in a waterfall environment. You want to say, but listen, I want to be an entrepreneur saying, okay, listen, my company need to be successful. The delivery of projects are going to be, one of the key. I wrote it down here somewhere. It's like the KPI. Now, one of the KPIs is to deliver projects successful. You say, but wait a minute. What is another KPI? Is making your projects work even in a very, very unstable environment or whatever. I mean, yes, guys, it is great. We are living in such a crazy time, and I know it's the same everywhere in South Africa. One of the first things that sort of made me felt better in a long time was when contact sports, and I'm talking school level, started becoming legal again, or whatever you want to call that. And it's not even that my kids play tennis and they play hockey and stuff, so it's not even contact sport that they play. But it just felt to me like, oh, I can see cars next to the rugby field again, and I can watch school rugby on the TV, and I can go and take my kids on a hockey thing, no? And if you think about all the back end to not just the coaching and the training and everything, the organizing those events and stuff, because the events just fell into place, no? Suddenly, I mean, after a week, it wasn't saying, guys, finish up what you are busy with. In 2 weeks' time, we're going to stop contact sport. It was an immediate effect thing. They literally said, from now on, no contact sports. And I think about the impact, and this is now a simple example of contact sports, but I think about in the project environment, how big that can play a role in what we are doing. Yeah, so that's interesting stuff, guys. We are talking about serious things here. I think this makes the discussions around projects nicer these days.
Yeah, and the I watched an insert on Carte Blanche last night that was all about infrastructure repurposing.
Okay.
And how office space, for instance, are now being used as work from home offices. Type of concept that they're putting forward, and I think it sort of speaks to the earlier question about how do you stay on trend but still keep your eye on the ball and make sure that you execute on your scope.
Yeah.
There's this component of innovation.
Yes, innovation.
That must never die.
Yeah.
And it is the times, like you say, the crazy times that we live in is just of such a nature, is hold your strategy and your ego very lightly, because there are so many things that are out of your control when you make decisions. About your strategy and your project, for that matter, that just remind yourself that you need to look, I hate that word agile, but it's fitting for the conversation. You have to remain agile.
On a micro level, on a macro level, not a micro level. So and that's it, Dion, is that I think after what we've went through in the last year and a half almost again already, is that the list, the things that I would put in the bottom of project manager's list would be innovation, entrepreneurship, and but what's the first one? There was 3 now: innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship. And I think if we can, as project managers, do that, and I've got a very good example. You say take your strategy lightly, and that is probably a bit of a dodgy thing to say, because your strategy in the long run is what's going to take you through difficult times. This is not maybe a nice project manager's example, but it's just something that really changed the way I would think about certain things. Is we had in our church there's a pastor. Now, if you think about what's happening in the churches, is obviously the people can't go to church anymore, and I've got a brother-in-law who's a pastor, and he says you won't understand how that impact their cash flow. It sounds bad, nah? Because people give if they go. Nah? So if they don't go, they just stop giving. They still go and do the stuff online and check all the stuff but they just stop giving. And obviously in our church here, there's one of the pastors, obviously the things didn't started to not go too well and stuff. And he he started a coffee delivery, a coffee business. He's selling coffee beans, no? And so if you think about a pastor, this is what I would say. If you think about a pastor strategically, he would probably be, he want to really influence people and to minister to people or whatever. And he became so successful through his coffee business. So he's doing deliveries. He's got a podcast that he's doing, and he's got like nice short videos. And what is he doing now? He's just changing his strategy from well, not even the strategy. His strategy stays the same. His operations, I almost want to say, from doing what he wanted to do in church, but doing it now in the business. And he's doing well. Obviously, I assume he's making some money as well, and everything's doing well. And that's just a nice example for me to say, but listen, what am I? What do I stand for? What can I? And again, going back to this innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship that we have to have in our projects as well, in an environment like that. And then, I mean, then nothing can stop you. What's interesting for me about this, what we are going through, is how random the good and the bad, how random everything is. I was saying jokingly, not even joking, I think it's actually serious. If let's say you're a sweeper, a cleaner. So one day you're looking for a job, you don't have money, you're living in a shack somewhere, and you went, where you're going to look for a job, you go into the industrial area. So you walk into the industrial area, and there's a business, you don't even know what they sell. You go in there, you knock on their door, you say, listen, I'm a cleaner, do you have a job for me? And they say, yes, come in, you can do the job. There's two businesses next to each other. That is a bread, let's say a company, a bread bakery, or a company that bakes bread. The next one is a beer company or a beer bottling company. If by luck you got the job on the second knock and not the first knock, you would have been out of job. And I'm just using that as an example. I mean, if you think about the businesses that thrives, and the same time businesses that goes down at this currently, and it's very, very interesting times. Oh, guys, we are chatting too nicely. We need to come back to the point.
One final question here was just regards to what do you think about agile management? And will that become the norm, given the rate of change that we have to operate in, Coenie?
Yeah, Dion, do they have agile in their training at all, like project management agile, in one of their modules or something?
Yeah, we touch on the principles.
Okay.
And there's also a guest lecture on the topic.
Okay.
That you delivered today.
So I'm not an agile guy. So I'm not even ashamed to say that I'm not. That's not what I do. I know there's a place for that, so I'm taking a while to get to your point. So I'm just getting to the answer. When you deal with functional project management, and I always want to put that slide back onto when you deal with this kind of stuff, the key thing over here is this block over here is the scope. In the way we manage projects is that we can know what the scope is. We can develop the scope, and we can very accurately say at this stage, before you go over to the time and the cost, you can very accurately over there say, what am I going to do? Now, not all projects are like that, and I had a client where they are in R&D, research and development, and one of their types of projects is to develop new. They build stuff. They build technology for mining, but I want to say electronic stuff. So I'm not going to go into what they do, but it is very. I mean, it's a very I would say a grey scope or deliverable. Develop a new machine that we can sell, that we can make money. Now you can do something.
Natures. You don't know what's going to pop out.
Exactly. And the thing that they've got very expensive resources. So it's people with PhDs that are helping them to develop that stuff. Now, so if you work 2 days on that project, and if you work 4 months on that project, it's a huge difference that we are dealing with. Now, so it's a difficult environment to manage functionally, like we've got functional, let's call it waterfall project management. But there is a place for like those. Now, like there is a place on those, the word agile means to to make a plan, and that is if you I would like to actually sit in with this person who's going to talk, because the agile approach to project management actually makes a lot of sense. If the client is confused or not 100% sure what they want, you don't want to go too far before, touching base and making sure you are in the right direction and so forth. And the principles of that, if you apply the principles of that now to a business environment, 100% great, because that's when you're going to say, but listen, we said we were going to build this whole thing to do this, or no, let's take something like a property developer, like the example that you just used. Now, is a property developer is building up a nice, or is bringing up a nice 10-story building in city center. By the time it's finished, no one wants to rent anything in there. Agile. Oh, what can we now use it? Oh, let's do a public whatever you want to call it, office renting, or do something else with it. Maybe, I don't know what. A a nice example of something that I've realized the other day. We actually went to city center Cape Town. My daughter had a dancing show that she and her mother wanted to go and see. And it was also my daughter's birthday, so we said, no, let's go to town, and we're going to actually sleep over there in a hotel and what. And we went just before, the boys, me and the boys don't want to see ballet, so we didn't we dropped them. But just before we dropped them, we went into the McDonald's in city center. I mean, in Cape Town city center. We went in there. We probably sat there for about 40 minutes, maybe a bit more longer, 45 minutes. And there was, I would say, if I would just roughly guess, I would say there were in that, let's say an hour now, there were probably what I would say is anything between 30 and 50 orders. From that 30 to 50 orders, me and my wife and my kids were the only people sitting in that space. It was just Mr. Delivery. It was just Uber Eats or whatever you want to call that. Now, if you think about how much they pay to rent that office, and if you think about how things have changed, so we jokingly said, later on, we said, McDonald's are going to start having McDonald's without a sit-in. So why don't they have a McDonald's in a industrial area somewhere where the rent is cheap, where everything's going to be. Okay, you see, and this is what we need to think about when we are in a role that we can play. We think about projects, the role of projects, as well as the strategy for the company is how can we align this. Sort of, I want to use this business case, that slider there. How can we apply this even in a very unstable environment?
Yeah. Christian has another question, and then I'm gonna give back to you, Coenie, because we are sort of out of time, and then you can just wrap up. Christian. Okay. Final comment?
Yeah, I also don't want to take too much, but just to add on to the Agile, where Agile now could pertain to some of the project more construction orientated. If you look at Leonardo Towers in Johannesburg, which I was involved with as well, that the scope, but obviously within your general waterfall management, there is scope change management as you go along, but the changes that have happened up to a certain point where it was almost monthly, as information spread, the owners of the building realized that other companies were also now planning certain buildings and certain changes. So every month, offices were becoming accommodation becoming offices that wanted to add. So it was quite a chaotic thing to look and experience. The poor contracts manager that's on island, the guy needed some counseling afterwards. But and as well, if you look at these bridges as well, they halfway through the planning and actually execution of the project, they started changing certain safety aspects and needed to change what the suspension bridge was supposed to do. So big changes constantly, and I've got my eye on the agile management, although not too much experience, but I'm just wondering how that would evolve in your conventional waterfall as well. But that's pretty much just where my point is at.
Oh, well, that's nice. Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. No, it's a crazy world, and I think we mustn't let, and that's sort of what I want to say also is we be very careful to not just say in this time, let's just throw everything out, and we just sort of almost dig into or dive into the agile project management, and I don't think that's the solution. But we need to maybe just upstream go a bit and see, what can we do before we get to the projects that we can apply that will make us more successful in this very unstable environment. And it's difficult. It's not I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer to this. Yeah.
Coenie, as a fellow project management lecturer, the lady we use are excellent. And the first thing she starts off by saying, Agile is just another project management methodology.
Yeah.
It works well for certain things, and it's impossible for certain things, right?
Yeah.
If I write applications, go Agile. If I build a building, be Agile.
Yeah.
Right? So us being Agile doesn't mean the project management is Agile. And I love that, and she also says it's like, what does she call the Agile pyramid scheme? Yeah, she says, because what we're doing is we're selling certifications in Agile. It doesn't mean that the system works for you. So, and if you look at it, it's like old project management, different naming conventions.
Yeah.
Right. And it's micromanaging stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, and people, unfortunately, again, they sell it to the CFO on the plane.
Yeah.
And he comes and he says, you can do a system in a week. It's like, and then he wonders why it fails.
Yeah. I think if you're a project management fundamentalist, I always want to say, then that the word, and I know everybody, if not yet, you're going to know what I'm talking about, is fit for purpose. When we talk about projects, we talk about quality, we talk about scope, everything's fit for purpose. And I want to take that one level up and say, project management is also fit for purpose. Is that some things, some areas, that it's going to work very well in an agile environment, others can. And you shouldn't be too, I want to say, patriotic for what you are driving and what you are standing for.
Yeah.
Okay.
Coenie, one of the insurance guy houses, one of his systems, he's got one team. Okay. And I said to him, what's on your backlog? And he had 58 sprints on the backlog. I said to him, how long is a sprint? He says, a sprint is 2 weeks. I said, well, you've got 2 years worth of work on the backlog. That's not agile. Rather make it a project then.
Yeah, you got to sprint. You got to sprint until you can't walk anymore.
It's like a joke, It's like
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Coenie, would you like to say a couple of final thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah. So what I want to say is it's very interesting for me if you look what happened in the last 2 years or year and a half now. And I actually had it on my list, but we were talking so nicely that I didn't even got to that. So what's nice about, well, not nice, what's interesting for me is 3 phases. We had pre-COVID project management. Then we went into crisis control project management. And what's nice is about now what I see is where we're going forward in terms of how it changed it. So in the longer run, or I want to say medium to longer run, how we do things. So that is something that I want to leave with you and say, but it's we are living in a world where things are changing all the time, and we need to just make sure that consistently we get to do what we need to do, but that we are living in a changing environment. And then the other thing that I take out of this, and if I say I want to sort of bring it into all my future courses, I want to say, is that those three things that we've been talking a lot about, the things of a project manager needs, and innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship, is a very important thing in a day like this, or a day and age like this. And that is something that I'm actually going to put into my list of things that the project manager need to be able to do, that I didn't even thought about before coming into a session like this. So yeah, thank you for you guys for helping me and to see the stuff better and to develop the things. And that's about what I wanted. So I hope it was enough value for everybody to take something out.
Great, thanks, Coenie.
Thank you, Coenie. I think from my side, once again, this is a project that I'm running. This program, this guest lecture series, this is a project that I'm running. And what I wanted to achieve with this project is to firstly help the students bridge that gap between what we teach in theory and how it happens in the real world, and make that connection. And I make use of guest lecturers like yourself to achieve that. So I think we can tick that box. It was sufficiently grounded in theory, but with the conversation was all about the real world and what's really happening out there, and that was just fabulous. Secondly, we also make use of this opportunity to give back to the university's community, our clients of the business school, etc. So thank you for facilitating that as well. And I really hope that everybody also had a good learning experience, just like myself and Coenie also had once again today. So on that note, thank you very much, Coenie. Thank you for everybody that attended. And there are 6 of these sessions still left for the week, and I hope you enrolled for all of them. And I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Dion.
Thank you very much, guys. Good luck with the rest, eh?
Thank you very much.
And it was recorded. Sorry, I can just note it was recorded, and I will share the recording with you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Dion. All the APMs, can you just pop back into class quickly?
Okay, Dion, so I'll talk to you later again. Thank you, Pete. Thank you. Good
Thank
luck.
you very much, Coenie.
Thanks, Coenie.